So this is a Dark Souls 2 mod called Scholar of the Second Sin, which is by a creator called From SotFS. They have a YouTube channel explaining how they made this mod, and it uses the Dark Souls 2 DS2 lighting engine. Both are available on Nexus Mods. He's recently come out and said he's trying to update this mod quite a bit. So I just want to talk about the differences it makes. Some problems I've noticed, but he said it's like a work in progress, so any bug reports you make are probably welcome by him. So I've started here in Lost Bastille, and you can see the game is a lot darker. Like the blacks are very dark. It's not HDR quality, but as you can see here, there's this. Here's a weird texture glitch where the rocks or roots perhaps are obscuring the camera. I've added this to the Nexus Mods bug list. It's a minor mod. It's not an area that's important or anything behind that elevator, but I did mention it. But you'll see that the contrast between the light and the dark is marked, and the textures are all upscaled. The mod's actually quite big. It's about 15 gigabyte. It's larger than the game install. So all the textures have been upscaled, which is pretty impressive. So what I'm going to do is head back to a few different areas and discuss. I'm quite early in this playthrough. I started another game, so I haven't unlocked all the bonfires or anything. Now you can see these shadows. The thing is, I can't quite remember with Dark Souls 2 if I know that they did have these like dynamic shadows around bonfires, but I think the thing that strikes me the most is a lot of people talk about, and I think this was the philosophy of the mod, was that the initial pitch for Dark Souls 2 was it would have a much more impressive graphics engine than the PS3 could actually handle, and it had to be scaled back quite a bit. Now Majula, everyone always talks about Majula looking amazing, and it does, but it's not the whole game, and it's one of the first areas you reach. And I think if you get to Majula and you go, wow, this game looks great, you probably need to keep playing a bit more. So I'm buying some life gems here. I just realised how many souls I have. I need to try and spend. But you'll notice there's a lot more grass in Majula. I've actually seen some complaints about this. I'll come back to this later. But there's a great deal of bloom in the sky. I'm in two minds about bloom. I think it was a bit of a curse of that era. It was used to cover up a multitude of sins, and it's not always a good thing. Not entirely sure it's ever a good thing, to be honest. But it does look pretty, and again, I'm going to put words in From SotFS's mouth, but the mod is trying to preserve the design philosophy of Dark Souls 2 as a product of its time. Yes, you might think the bloom is a bit overdone, but that's what games look like in when did this come out? 2013, I think. Now, there's a glitch here. You can see there's this weird sort of effect. I'll bring up the menu to see if this effect is a cause of bloom. I'm struggling to remember what it might be. See, I immediately think it's depth of field. We'll go into more detail about depth of field later as well. But you can see on this hut where the blacksmith resides, there's this kind of ghosting effect. I don't think this is the mod's fault. I think this is an inherent problem with the Dark Souls 2 Scholars of the First Sin engine. And it kind of mitigates itself as you get nearer it. And as you can see in here, in the blacksmith workshop, it's very dark. The contrasts are very high. I like it. I actually prefer it because Majula is a very well lit area, and it would make sense that an indoor area would be extremely dark with no natural light sources, or artificial light sources in fact. So I'm going to do some stuff here where I upgrade my armour. I buy a few time match shards. But yeah, so the mod designer has said he has butted heads with the engine. Sometime, you know, this isn't I'm recording this in 2025. This isn't 2025. We don't have the modern, conveniences of game engines. This is being retrofitted. So now the darkness, right? So I've gone to Things Betwixt because I think Things Betwixt for an opening area is very striking. So here's an indoor area where you meet the firekeepers. I think this looks very attractive. There's not really... Yeah, I mentioned shadows earlier. There's no... I mean, my character is casting perhaps a very slight shadow. But it's not quite as marked as it is around a bonfire. But there's a weird bloom effect there that just disappears. You know, perhaps, why would you go backwards in Things Betwixt? That's one of those things where it could be easily missed. But you can see that the contrast is really fantastic. Now, some people have complained this is too dark. I disagree. You can make out the scenery. Your character has a natural aura of light. And this is the thing I wanted to get back to about the Majula grass. Now, Things Betwixt starts in a very grassy area. Okay. Now, the mod may have changed this somewhat, but even in in Scholars, the vanilla version of Scholars, this area has a high density of vegetation. So the game could handle it, the game engine could handle it, but they decided, I guess, for technical reasons, design reasons, etc., that Majula would not have this. But when I've seen people say, to repeat myself, oh, there's too much grass in Majula. Well, first of all, you know, you go back to Majula again and again and again. If you were going to lavish attention on one particular area in Dark Souls 2, it would be Majula. You're there an awful lot. Every time you have to level up, you have to go back there. And the game engine has proved that, you know, you can have that level of detail. So I understand that. That seems like a rational decision for a designer to make. So next, I'm going to go to, I think, Cardinal Tower, which was in the original demo footage that was shown. I think it was some kind of, was it E3? I don't know. But this was an area that was specifically chosen to show the contrast between the dark and the light. And then when the game came out, people were very disappointed that it looked nothing like that. So here is Forest of Fallen Giants. There's, I think, the Stranglake Castle in the background. And you can see the texture work is very good. And then you come in here, the contrast is fantastic. I really like this. I think this works very well. You don't need to see all the nooks and crannies. Now I've got a torch out here because that was again a mechanic of Dark Souls 2 that was probably pared back somewhat, but I mean the shadows are dynamic, and you'll see here as I move along the wall there's I don't know the graphical technical terms, but there's a very subtle shifting of light, and it kind of mirrors how the human eye would react to a dark environment. Immediately in front of you can see with a torch, but in the distance everything is blocked out because your eyes have adapted to the light and not the dark. And the game even, or the mod in tandem with the game, acknowledges this somewhat. You know, when you walk through a door, there is a small beat where your eyes have to adapt. I personally think this looks very impressive. I mean, I'm playing this in 4K, and the improved textures are very good. But the lighting, it might be worth me posting a link to the original Dark Souls 2. It wasn't a demo, it was more of an initial announcement, I suppose. Now, see, once I've moved that side, you can see that the lighting has... It opened up a bit. It realises I'm in an outdoor area. And so the contrast has somewhat dropped. I've got an enemy. I've kited an enemy into throwing some firebombs just to show off those lighting effects there. I do apologise. I'm wearing a ring that has this buff effect on me, which I don't like. But I mean, I like the ring, but I don't like the buff effect. So this is probably the most prime example of the lighting in the game, but it's a very early area. So I'm going to slide down the ladder now. Now here, right, this is the thing I have. The DS2 lighting engine has depth of field effects. I don't really like depth of field. The DS2, sorry, the Scholar of the Second Sin suggests you have far and near, and there are options to tweak them. But you can see here you have this blurred field of view effect in the background, which it disappears as soon as you get near it. I think it's quite jarring. I switched my settings to just far. I did far and near. It kept switching so suddenly and abrasively that I didn't like it at all. But I think I might just turn them off. I don't really know if depth of field works. Okay, so this is... I'm adapting this after I've recorded it. This plunge attack seems to do absolutely nothing. I'm a little confused about that. I think it's because the sword I have has a fire effect on, so apologies for that. But you get to see some of the impressive ambient lighting and so on. I need to remember where I am in the video. So we've got quite a while left. So we've discussed the lighting. We've discussed my impressions on depth of field. So I think I'm going to go to Heide's Tower of Flame. And like Majula, this is an area that's surrounded by water and has a sort of natural beauty to it. So I'll wait for that to load. And now, one of the things DS2 lighting engine allows you to do is change the position of things like the sun or where the light is cast from. It's done in a way that is more dynamic rather than fixed. But that's what I'm going to question here is, so these knights, I do forget their names. I know the Heide knights are the ones with the white cloaks, and then you have these big bastards. I can't remember. I think they're called elite knights. I can't remember. But yeah, so I think they're called elite knights. I do apologise, I can't remember the name of them, but I remember them either being silver or gold. Now, I don't know if that's true, and I don't want to nitpick, but they look green under this specific set of mods, and I don't know if that's maybe a case of the textures being upscaled. I mean, this is like the blue and white dress thing. I mean, is that gold? I don't know. Were they never gold? I can't be sure. But I think because of the lighting effects, there's definitely a different impression on the eye. That's just a nitpick. That might be. Again, like I say, the original textures were upscaled, and now the colour is more noticeable. A rare example of me actually killing one of these enemies. And you'll see I immediately undo any competency I have with this Heide Knight. Now here's the thing. So you'll see these low res, the window arches. There's a high res texture, and as soon as you get within a certain distance, they go to a sort of low res texture. Again, not really a big deal, but just perhaps a little bug to be fixed. And yeah, so I was thinking about that is definitely green. Like, people view colour subjectively. To me, that's green. You may disagree. Maybe they were always like that. Anyway, I've banged off about that enough. So, but this is still a very attractive area, and you'll see, again, I'll walk out the door, and you'll see like a little, very subtle, but you'll see like a little adaptation of the eye. The frame rate, because it's kind of capped in Dark Souls 2, it depends on your hardware how much you want to push these graphics, especially with these upgraded textures. I find it's probably no worse than it was before, but I'm running a 4080, so we're back to Majula now. Again, there's a lot more detail, but we went over that earlier. And here I'm just doing a bit of upgrading. So, kind of to sum up, really, I suppose. I do like this mod. I think it makes the game look more interesting. I never went to No Man's Wharf, actually. That is a particularly interesting area because it's one that relies heavily on the light and dark mechanic. But I do remember I did play Dark Souls 2 with just the normal lighting engine, and it crushed the colours a lot, especially in like lava areas and things like that. And I think this Scholars of the Second Sin mod gets rid of a lot of those sins. So I hope you've enjoyed me rambling on. And I'm going to fuck off now. Bye bye.